let's just begin, Emily, with having a conversation about the folks that we know at this point who will be on the stage. We are expecting
Hmm.
Haley, of course, DeSantis. Um,
I think Vivek is already is on, and I think
yes,
Chris Christie is,
still
yeah,
trying to figure out if he's going to fully qualify. What do you
right.
think we'll see from them in terms of trying to set themselves apart from the former president, but also appeal to his base?
Yeah, that's going to be really the challenge, I think, for the candidates because Trump does have his base. And so, what they need to do, or what their strategy may be, is to try to appeal to the Trump base, but then also differentiate themselves from that base. I know Nikki Haley has said in the past that Trump was the right person at the right time, but now it's time for someone new. Chris Christie has been critical of the president. Um, so um, it's it will be interesting. I think there will be a lot of arguing and debate during the debate. Again, that is the strategy, is how to differentiate themselves. I don't know if I'm answering the question correctly or not. One of the things I do also want to mention is the purpose of the primary is to win your party's nomination. So right now, the candidates are trying to um, appeal to party loyalists. And so they're going to really talk about the issues that are of interest to Republican voters. That would be the economy or abortion, those things that Republican voters are interested in. Um, Once they have secured the nomination, if they secure it, then that message will broaden to try to appeal to independent as well as crossover voters. So, right now, they're really trying to capture that Republican nomination by trying to appeal to the Republican base, talk about those issues that would be of interest to Republicans, and trying to walk that line between how to differentiate themselves from Trump, but then also appeal to its base, whether it's time for a new leadership or whether it is I can carry on his policies, whatever. But that's going to really be the challenge for them in this upcoming debate.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that was helpful or
Yes,
not.
and it is a challenge indeed because many Democrats are looking at this as if a Trump victory, you know,
It's
it
everybody's
basically would
talking about the
jeopardize
Trump Biden
democracy.
ticket,
Yes, right.
right? That
But
it's
we know that if this ends up being a Trump Biden contest, it's going to be neck and neck.
because and a big factor or a concern that keeps coming up is this idea of age. Biden is 81, Trump is 4 years behind him. Age is a concern, but yet these two candidates tend to be the front runners of their parties. So it's interesting to watch how this is all playing
Yeah,
out.
and based on some of the research we've done already, a lot of the young people um, in the last election, or most of them, supported Biden. But now it
Mm-hmm.
appears, according to the polls, that age is a real factor for the younger voters. And we know we're going to have about 8 million or so of them up for grabs across the country. And here in Alabama, the Republicans and the Democrats, in terms of the folks who fall like in the Gen Z generation, they're kind of like split. So it's going to be interesting to
Mm-hmm.
see how this all pans out. We know Nikki
Mm-hmm.
Haley is improving some. She got a big endorsement
Mm-hmm.
by Coke not too long ago, and they're like huge anti-Trumpers. And so it'll be interesting to see what that does for her. But what do you think we'll see from the candidates on the stage next Wednesday in terms of trying to appeal to the younger voters? I wondered if their move to bring this to Alabama and to a college campus is a part of their agenda to try to engage younger voters and get them more involved in this process.
Well, Alabama is considered a safe Republican state, and so you typically will see the Republican contenders come here for the primary. But after the primary, it's may be assumed that Alabama will go Republican in the general election. And so that's why they're one of the reasons why we tend to see the Republican contenders come here, because the battle really is for that Republican nomination in Alabama and in other states that are considered safe Republican states. And again, the purpose of this primary is to win that party's nomination. So they want to come here and capture those Republican voters. Once they know they have those voters and they've secured that nomination, they're assuming that the state will remain Republican in the general election. One of the things I also want to mention is that the economy can be a factor in determining whether someone is motivated to vote. If they have food in their refrigerator, if they have a roof over their heads, if they're doing well, they tend to feel like things are going pretty well, and so maybe the incumbent is doing a pretty good job. But when food prices go up and the gas prices go up, then people tend to be more motivated for some type of change of leadership. And so that's the economy may be something that we will see. Another thing I wanted to mention too is that in the past debates that we have seen, some of the areas where we've seen differences between these candidates has been over the issue of abortion. And whether or not that issue should be left to the states or it should be handled on the federal level. You'll see differences between the candidates on that particular issue. And then also whether or not to have aid to Ukraine. That's another area where these candidates tend to differentiate whether or not to give aid to Ukraine or not. That's what I've viewed in the past in the debates. I just thought I would mention that's where we could see some differences among the candidates when it comes to those policy issues.
Right
But they've
now,
all said, yeah, they've all said that China is posing a threat. But I did want to mention that. I
yes.
don't know if that's helpful or
That's a
not.
great point. Yes, thank you for mentioning that. And we know right now the former president will not be on the stage next Wednesday. He will be at a fundraiser in Florida while the debate is happening. What's behind, you think, the former president's motivation to continue to avoid these debates?
Um, okay, I'm going to step back, and I know this is tape, but when I worked with Alabama Public Television, typically if there was a candidate that was a front runner and was very ahead in the polls, typically or probably that candidate did not debate. Because that person it was the front runner, and typically the front runner is so far ahead that um, putting that person on the debate stage, there's nowhere else to go but down, and also to make that person a target for attacks. Because if Trump does come on the stage, the candidates are going to attack him, and there's nowhere else for him to go but down. So while he is doing well in the polls, why set himself up for something that could jeopardize his campaign strategy? I understand he's going to be at a fundraiser. I think he considers himself well ahead of the polls, and that he doesn't need this debate to win voters because he feels like he already has this base. Um, and one of the things that I have heard from the candidates in the past is whenever the issue of polling comes up, most of the time they tend to say, well, polls don't translate into votes. So that is something that we'll probably hear from the candidates, is that Trump may be ahead in the polls, but polls are not votes. And that's what we're wanting, is we're wanting votes. We want to win that Republican nomination in this state.
One other thing I want to mention, Emily, because this is kind of like uncharted territory for us, right? When we think about the legal trouble right now that the former president is facing, and if he does end up becoming the nominee, what happens? Because this isn't in the books anywhere, or or in the Constitution. We've never really faced anything quite like this situation. Do you have a sense of the direction that this might take as we get closer, based on what could potentially happen in terms of the former president's legal proceedings?
Um, that's a very interesting question when it comes to the federal versus state cases. Um, if it was a federal case, um, one of the questions that has come up is whether or not Trump could pardon himself. Um, the case I think that would be really interesting to watch would be the Georgia case, because that is a case that is in state court. It is my understanding that the proposed date for that to go to trial is around August, which would be ahead of the general election. I don't know if that's going to be postponed or not, but that would be an interesting case because it is in state court, it is not in federal court. And I don't know if Trump would have the power to pardon himself on the state court level. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question, but I do think the Georgia case is interesting because it is a state case and not a federal case. I don't know on
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I hope that was helpful.
Yes, it was. Is there anything else you want to share, add, or know that you think we should touch on before I let you go?
Um, I can't think of anything. Is there anything else you're interested in, or I know that I've emailed you, a couple of things that
Yeah.
I've thought about, but I can't think of anything.
Okay. Um,
So I know that in the Georgia case, um, there have already been three that have pled guilty. So it will be interesting to see how that plays out. There are a couple of cases that are going to take place in March, and Alabama voters will head to the polls in March. So that will be interesting to see as we get into the primary season. I'm trying to see, I wrote down when they're set to go. The Manhattan hush money case is set to go to trial, I think, March 24th, when I wrote that down. And I think there's another one that's supposed to go to trial on March 4th, and then the Georgia case goes in August. So
mhm.
um,
And the
I'll be
Republican
interested to
convention
see.
is in July. Will be in
Yeah,
Milwaukee in July, and so that's when we'll find out who the official nominee is.
yeah.
But yeah,
So it'll be interesting to see about that.